Hey guys, what's happening? So we got a new trailer for Avengers Endgame this morning, and it's showing us a lot more than anything thus far. And much like I told you guys on Twitter, I'm still going with my Black Widow hair theory, which I'll touch on a little bit more in this video, but I also got a link below if you need the full spill on that. So if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. But so now, before we even dive into this, I feel like it is appropriate to give you a disclaimer because footage scenes in the trailers may be different in the film, and that's under the circumstances that they are even in the film at all. But even if there's a small chance that any of this could be true, we owe this to everyone who's not in this trailer. But just diving into this, I gotta say that this trailer shows me more than anything the reason why the Russo brothers made this film separate from Infinity War, because this is the one that draws everything that we've been through the past 10 years of our lives to a conclusion, and at least the last 10 years of our lives watching these movies, not like everything in our lives. But seriously, had this been Infinity War Part 2, the impact of the snap and the anticipation of the Endgame just wouldn't have had the same effect. And I feel like with this trailer, it's just so much clearer why the Russo brothers wanted this film to stand alone in a sense. But with this trailer starting and the first voice that we hear is Tony Stark, who is the man who started it all, and with him reminiscing on the past years, becoming Iron Man, falling in love with Pepper, just reminding us of what he's fought for throughout the years, and over time what that's flourished into, which is giving him the motivation to go back to his core roots and pull it off like one more time. Because at this point he has so much more to fight for, and on top of that, man, Iron Man ain't finna go out like this. Not you, Iron Man. No. Like, he has got one more trick up his sleeve, and his greatest creations are born in the face of death. Except for Ultron, he was kind of like a stepchild. But either way, the narration of Agent Peggy Carter couldn't be more appropriate for the Endgame. And what they're saying, the world is changing and none of us can go back, that is the reason that we should move on. But if you eliminate the possibility of not being able to go back, then you're not stuck with the only option of having to move forward. And even if that possibility is a long shot, as small as it may be, you gotta do whatever it takes. But getting into the next thing I want to talk about in this trailer is when we see Hawkeye and his daughter, and really if we take a closer look, what appears to be Hawkeye and his whole family, to where at this time we can see in the background his younger son, which was mentioned in Age of Ultron, has been born. And here we also get a glimpse of him training his daughter Lila, who's very likely to take up his mantle at some point later on in the MCU. And we can also see what appears to be his wife Laura in the background, but what gets me about this scene here is the amount of time that seems to have passed and how much older the children look, because Cooper's taller, little Nathaniel is walking, and Lila is nearly her dad's height. So if there's any truth to them being gone in the snap, I would imagine that Lila, for example, will be about the same size as Cassie Lang around that time, and mainly because Age of Ultron and the first Ant-Man film both came out in 2015, 1 month apart, and even on the timeline they happen right next to each other, so you would think Lily would be around the age of Cassie around the time that the snap occurred, with the end of Infinity War taking place at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp. But when we see Lily here, she looks like she's more in her early teens, like a good few years older than Cassie, like freshman in high school older, which immediately made me think of Tony Stark's barf technology, but immediately I also think that the RF also stands for retro framing. But this also ties into my deeper theories with Ant-Man jumping too far into the future before jumping again too far back, but eventually combining Hank Pym's technology with Tony Stark, which then can potentially process 14,605 possibilities and render a reference to the outcome thereof. And I just added the render part onto that just now, it just came to me. But moving forward, this scene right here, this very familiar looking scene to where we have this more experienced looking Natasha Romanoff with the longer hair. Seeing this in the most recent trailer just takes me back to that theory video I did back when the promo art was released, when I'd mentioned that the Natasha Romanoff with the blonde hair, with the short blonde hair to be specific, when I'd mentioned throughout the film Natasha Romanoff's hair would be what would help the viewer kind of know what's going on at what particular time. Because in my theory, the short blonde Romanoff, she would actually be the second Romanoff that we see in the film after Ant-Man had went too far in the future, with us seeing Romanoff with her hair all blonde and much longer, which is where Scott Lang actually finds out that he's arriving after the snap. And with him attempting to jump again, but then jumping back too far, that explains the archive footage that Cap and Romanoff find, with Romanoff still having short blonde hair in what would generally be your present day after the snap. And so in this present day, and spoiler alert if you haven't seen Captain Marvel, but in this present day, Romanoff still has short hair, Captain Marvel arrives back, and we get the whole scene play out from the end credits of Captain Marvel, which is why after seeing that, I'm pretty sure Captain Marvel is in this blank spot right here. Like at this point, she's been there. And Thor, who is either out of the frame or possibly left to go get Rocket Raccoon, who we know separated from everyone else, but as we see in this trailer, he definitely comes back to ride on War Machine's shoulder, which I gotta add is a shot that was bound to happen. And although he's seen Rhodey before in Wakanda, they never really spoke before, but I'm sure Rocket's gonna inquire how much for the suit. But either way, in this one, I'm not gonna go too deep into Rocket, mainly because I did a separate video, which I got down in the description, where I talked about more of how Rocket knows the creator of the Microverse, which is a whole nother theory, and I'm gonna try not to derail too crazy off of here. We're just gonna stick to Widow's hair on this one. But going back to Avengers headquarters, with Captain Marvel already with the team, it's here where they're met with the final arrival of Ant-Man, to whom at this point has made God knows how many jumps. And he may give us a crazy number, but in the film I only see us like actually seeing 3, with him being too late, being too early, and then eventually arriving on time. But as from there, as I mentioned, some time passes to where we finally come to a present where the Avengers know what they need to do, with Ant-Man's final arrival, in this shot possibly even the arrival of Tony and Nebula, but still near the time that Ant-Man returns. But from this time, this quote-unquote present day time, all the way up until we see Widow with the longer hair, the time that passes here will resemble the time of the Avengers trying to figure out how to fix everything, which will explain the images with the hand devices, who as far as promotional images we've only seen Widow with. And I mean, there's leaks everywhere with everyone else having the same hand device, but for the promos we only see Widow. And more of that I talk about in the original hair theory video, where I also go into Scott Lang contacting her first and her being the first to jump, because even still at this point she's the only one we've seen with that hand device, with the only exception being the suits that we see everyone in at the end of this trailer. And so at this point, and even getting into the rest of the stuff in this trailer, I want to switch gears into my next theory, which I would kind of call following the barf trail, for lack of a better name. But in this instance, with Tony being with the Avengers at this point, which would combine with Hank Pym's quantum studies, to where quantum theory deals with infinite possibilities of how something could play out, much like we talked about recently in our Doomsday Clock playlist. But it's likely what they'll discover is that the plan that they find out that works actually will cost them Hawkeye's life, because whatever it is he has to do, he won't be able to make it out in time. And so as a solution, instead of Hawkeye going on this mission with both him and Black Widow, Steve Rogers is gonna make the call to stand in for Clint by going on this mission, taking Hawkeye's place, but dying in the process. And this theory I base very loosely on the whole terms of Doctor Strange mentioning that there's really only one way, but more so towards the idea of the Avengers seeing multiple possibilities and not knowing which one is the correct one. But if someone's going to die, Steve Rogers is the first to jump on that grenade. And this theory plays into them seeing a number of possibilities where they either see themselves or other members die, but due to lack of time, like not being able to go through each and every possibility and years passing with them trying to figure it out, they're then forced to try the closest way to fix everything, but not being 100% certain that it's gonna work. And so now, last but not least, and kind of going for a third turn here, because I swear we've been having infinite possibilities on this playlist alone. But I just got 2 more and I'm done. I swear I could do this all day. But in this third one, given the instance that they know exactly what to do, following the return of Ant-Man, Captain Marvel joining the Avengers, Tony and Nebula returning to Earth safely, they then come to the conclusion of how to make things right, to where that one possibility is one that they don't like, so then they try a few others using the hand devices as a practice round, but then eventually we get the suits, heavily based on Pym and Stark technology, which in addition also have the functionality of their individual suits. Like for Ant-Man, he can either shrink down or grow larger, for War Machine he still has his armor and all his weapons, everyone else so on and so forth, with 2 additions, and the 2 additions which come from Captain Marvel, with the first drawing energy off of her, which is based on the Space Stone, in order to make the multiple jumps for multiple members possible, but also in getting into the time travel thing. And the second one is not so much just Captain Marvel, but I guess you could say Tony as well, but I'd say also allowing the suits to change colors and actually transform into different versions of the suits fitting into what time that they're going to, which means any scene from these trailers can be an actual scene where they're wearing the suits. And last but not least, and I'm gonna split this one in half, but I'm gonna make it quick. But last but not least, 1, Doctor Strange actually told Tony the plan back on Titan, and at this point ain't nothing to it but to do it. Or 2, which is actually 5 at this point. But finally, and last of all, with Avengers Endgame being a 3-hour film, we actually get the suits like around the 21st minute of the film, and the entirety of the film is them going through the multiple possibilities to where us as the viewer would skip many of them, but the Avengers would just keep on living like the last 4 hours of Infinity War until they made things right. Once again, making many tough calls, but continuing to press forward because they know eventually one of these possibilities will work, and the only thing sustaining them per se is their suit suits that allowed them to do this from the quantum realm, because in real time, whatever this interval of time is that they're repeating, it would eventually run the course of decades had they done this anywhere else but the quantum realm. Which leads me to number 6. Oh man, I need to stop. Okay, which leads me to number 6. So at this point, say they find a method that works, but in order to do it, they must actually physically leave the quantum realm and go to that time. And only because someone must actually die in order for this to work, whether it's to get the soul stone or whatever other reason. Alright, but that's it. That'll do it for this one, guys. I just wanted to get all this off my chest. I'm out of control. This trailer's out of control. The whole Marvel universe is out of control. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, your crazy ideas, crazy theories. I want to hear it all. But if you want to hear more of mine, I got plenty more on this playlist. Some with Tony Stark actually dying in Ant-Man's time travel saving his life. Man, I'm all over the place. Because at the end of the day, nobody knows. But at the end of the day, it's just so hard not to speculate. But leave all your spectacular speculations right below that like button, and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.